Guy, it is fantastic to see you. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
Absolute pleasure. How are you doing today?
I'm good. Already went surfing, so it's a good day.
Brilliant. You know, we've got a couple of quick questions just to get to know you. Surfing comes up in a minute, actually. But the most important question, what is your favorite car?
My favorite car?
We know you love
Ooh,
cars.
that's a tricky question. When is this podcast coming out?
Well, in about a month or so. So you can change your mind at last minute if you need to.
Well, right now, as of this moment, I'm a Mercedes-Benz brand ambassador. So I happen to love Mercedes. Having said that, and I've had like an S63, I've had, oh my God, AMG GT. Right now I'm in an A class. I'm just about to buy a mattress.
Sounds
So
like it's
yeah,
hard to choose.
it's not easy being a Mercedes brand ambassador because you can basically pick any Mercedes you want. But it gets complicated because my ambassadorship is ending in about 3 days, and I have decided maybe that I want one more manual shift in my life. You know, like before I get too senile to be able to shift. So the amount of cars that are available as a stick in America are limited. And I have to tell you that since I was in high school and someone gave me a ride in a green 911T, I have loved 911s. So I may buy a 911 stick in addition to the mattress.
Well,
If
I hope it lives up to the expectations when you do.
the mattress or the 911?
The 911, the 911.
Well, I've had 911s before, and I don't know. There's just, this is not, something like a midlife crisis or some, last minute
Of
thing.
course.
Literally, since I was 18, I've loved 911s.
Beautiful. Okay, and we know your other two passions, well, two of many, are surfing and ice hockey. So you're
Well, yeah.
very weird desert island where for some reason they only have one of those, which doesn't really make much sense. And you can't surf off the island as well. Which are you going to choose?
So wait, say what's again? The choices are: I'm on an island. There's
Yeah.
one rink and no surfing.
No, there's one sport you can do, the island sport, let's say.
Oh,
You can
oh,
either
oh, oh,
surf.
oh, oh.
Yeah.
Okay, so I can either surf or play hockey.
Yes.
Well, I've given up hockey for surfing, so that's easy. Surfing.
Oh, easy peasy. Okay.
Yeah,
Moving straight
yeah.
on then. iOS or Android?
Are you kidding me?
Well, it's a
I
trick
actually,
question,
I have,
kind of.
actually, I have one of each. It's because I'm on the board of directors of a company called Privy, and Privy has both Android and iPhone. So I need to have one of each. And I will tell you though, of course, the answer is I use an iPhone 95% of the time.
Thank God.
But there are things about Android that I really like. That Android is better than iOS in some ways.
Whoa. Do you feel okay saying that? Do you feel like you're betraying your roots, letting that slip?
I don't know. I mean, I don't think I'm going to exactly affect Apple sales by saying that. So, yeah, there are some things that Android does better. For example, there's a easy to get to view in Android that alphabetically lists all the apps you have on your phone. And so, on iOS, I mean, this happens to me a few times a week. Like I know I have the app, right? But I can't remember, is it called Sony Media or iMedia or Camera Connect or whatever. And so with Android, you just flip it to that view and it's like all alphabetical. And on iOS, I don't know about you, but I put stuff in folders, and sometimes, I name the folder social. Sometimes I name it news. Sometimes I name it utilities. Sometimes I name it productivity. And then I say, okay, so I want to use Microsoft Word on my iPhone or my iPad. Like, oh shit, is it in the Microsoft folder? Is it in the productivity folder? Is it just on another window, one of the multiple screens. And in Android, you just flick it to that view, and you scroll through alphabetically, and there it is, Microsoft Word.
I'm hearing a bit of a Google evangelist here. I think this is
Well,
creeping in, definitely.
well,
Okay.
I mean,
Well,
at
I'll ask
least
quick
at least
question.
your listeners will know that I'm not just drinking the Kool-Aid here.
No, well, that I think they've known that for about all of your career, given given the authentic nature of your speeches, and yeah, I wouldn't worry about that too much.
Okay.
What do you think, our listeners, then? What is one thing you think that most people could, do differently or do better?
Wear a mask.
Where right now, that would be
That
it's
would be
disappointing,
helpful.
isn't it?
Yes. Yeah. Well, where are you located?
So I'm in Kent, actually. We're unfortunately, there's terrible backlighting. I'm on my family farm. We're normally in the other
You're
room, which has a beautiful view, but we're in Kent.
you're in where?
Kent in England.
Oh,
And sorry, yeah, I should have started with the country,
yeah,
given you're across the
yeah,
ocean.
yeah, yeah. And where is Kent relative to like London?
Well, so it is southeast of London. So
East.
heading towards the coast. About
All
40
right.
minutes. Not too bad. Not too bad.
Is there surfing there?
I'm sure you could find a way. There's not really, but
No.
I have faith in you
Yeah.
for sure.
Yeah.
Cornwall's your place. When you come to England, give Cornwall a look, and that would be beautiful.
Listen. I love London. I lived in London for 6 weeks once, and I just loved it. And I don't want to tell you, but I love Wagamama. I could eat a Wagamama every
Oh,
day.
oh
I love
no.
Wagamama.
Oh
What?
no. Oh God, we're gonna have to
What?
end the interview. I'm heartbroken.
Why?
I was so excited for this as well. Okay, basically, long story short, I worked at Wagamama for a year. And as
Yeah.
I'm sure you know, most people who then start working at any restaurant chain soon learn
Yeah.
not to love that restaurant chain.
Are you telling me that there's rats in the kitchen and stuff like that?
Well, on record, I'm not sure what I can say.
Well, I don't care what you say. I love Wagamama.
Okay. It's okay. You're a brilliant man, so we'll agree to disagree.
Okay.
We'll agree to disagree. But on
Okay.
this topic, actually, so funny enough, Wagamama was my first, real job.
Yeah.
But before I started a career, and my first, core question to you was going to be, in your book, Wise Guy, you say that
Yeah.
when you were looking for jobs, you were very market orientated, and that in hindsight, you felt this was the wrong way to go about it. What does that mean, and why was that the wrong way to approach it?
Well, I think that there's a lot of factors often conflicting in looking for a job. And I'm assuming we're addressing people who are young and maybe this is their
Yeah,
first or second job. Yeah.
exactly.
So there's a lot of conflicting ideas here. So one idea is you have to be really careful and pick the perfect job because it's going to be on your resume and it's going to shape you and position you, et cetera, et cetera. So you just aggravate about finding that perfect job with the perfect title, not too low, et cetera, et cetera. I would make the case that in your generation, you're probably going to have 10 jobs over your career. So it's not like in my generation or even previous to my generation, you really had to pick the perfect job because you're going to be at that company for 20, 30, 40 years. So if you screwed up early, you really messed up. Now, I mean, you're going to work for Wagamama for a year, and then you're going to work for, I don't know, what's the online betting thing in London?
Ladbrokes, maybe.
Yeah,
No?
you're
Yeah,
going to
pick
work
that
for them
one.
for a year, and then you're going to work for Goldman Sachs for a year, and you're going to work for Accenture for a year, and then, you won't even remember your first job. So that's number one. Number two, there's a theory that when you listen to very successful people, they come into a school or whatever, and they tell you, pursue your passions, do what you
Yes,
love, and the money will
yes,
come.
yes.
And then you say to them, okay, so you're telling me to do what you love, the money will come, but you made your money in coal mining, or you made your money making ball bearings, or you made your money, I don't know, mining granite. So was that your passion? Did you get up every morning thinking, man, I love granite. I just want to pull granite out of the ground? And the obvious answer to that is, of course, no. So I just interviewed Scott Galloway on my podcast, and he has a different theory. His theory is, find something that you do very well, pay the price, grind it out, and become very good at it. And I think that
Oh,
is a much better career path than saying, oh, so at one extreme, you're reading Verve and you're reading The Economist and you're reading, everything, TechCrunch and CNET, and you're saying, okay, so everybody's talking about, I don't know, cybersecurity. So I'm going to go into cybersecurity. So that's at one extreme, truly marketing driven. The other extreme is, oh, I love, playing the violin. So I'm going to be a professional violinist. That's the other extreme. You're pursuing your passions. What Scott says and what I would tell you is, if find something you're good at and just pay the price. And I also believe, contrary to what most people will tell you, that the opposite of pursuing your passion and the money will come. I think in the real world, it works often in the opposite way. So here's an example. Now, let's say you're a programmer and you go to work for a company that sells dog food online, okay? But you don't really like dogs, you don't like cats, you don't like pets. You're just a programmer, and they happen to have dogfood.com as advertising for PHP programmers, and you got the job. So now you're at dog food online and you're optimizing websites or pages or email or whatever, data, whatever. And you're optimizing for dog food sales. And then lo and behold, one day you wake up and, oh my God, your options, because dogfood.com is doing so well. You're selling, 5 million pounds of dog food per day around the world. The market cap of dogfood.com is now $20 billion. And, you got in early, so you own 1%. And now, you're worth, I don't know, 200 million, $300 million because of dog food. I will tell you that in that scenario, you will love dog food. Man, I was born to market and optimize dog food. I love writing PHP programs for dog food. I love dogs. I love dog collars. I love dog leashes. I love dog bowls. I love dry food. I love wet food. I love dogs. I am passionate about dogs. Trust me, that'll happen.
see, this is super interesting because we actually called the show Build Your Superpower rather than Find Your Superpower, based
Yeah,
on this kind of idea. There's this thing that,
we're in sync. We are absolutely in sync. Yeah.
so here's an interesting thought then. You come, your pedigree, your origination is from the
Mm-hmm.
Steve Jobs School of Life for a lot of things. And yet
Mm-hmm.
he is the godfather of, um, listen to your heart and intuition. They already know what you want to become. Don't stop till you find that perfect match. And what do we,
Well,
what do you say? What do we say?
so- well, some of that is just pure California bullshit. Um, and you know what? I mean, Steve Jobs was one in a billion. I mean, how many
Mm,
Steve Jobs has there been in history? So, maybe there was Steve Jobs, Richard Branson, Thomas Edison, maybe Elon Musk. So there, 4, 5, I'll call it 10. So there'll be 10 people in history like that. So I would caution anyone to say, okay, so Steve Jobs did this, and I'm going to do this, and I'm going to be like Steve Jobs. Probably not. And so, yeah, I mean, that's the danger in business and management books, is that
mm.
it's not scientific. There's no hypothesis. There's no objectivity. There's no controlling for variables. It's not like you took two people equally qualified in the same industry, same conditions. One was Steve Jobs and one was Joe Blow. Come to find out, Steve Jobs succeeded, Joe Blow failed. Controlling all the variables, you figured out it's, Steve Jobs's whatever personality versus Joe Blow's personality. But that kind of science doesn't happen. And it's very difficult to separate correlation from causation. So be cautious of that.
No, I couldn't agree more. And he was good, but he doesn't have to be right about everything. So that's fair
No, he
enough.
was. I mean, and like it. it's not that easy to be the next Steve Jobs.
Famously.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, believe me, if it were easy, more people would be.
Just while we're on this, actually, very quickly, what is, because there is this glorifying, and like you say, people should be cautious, really cautious about taking everything from someone. What is one thing, they should take from him and one thing they shouldn't?
Well, I had a lot of lessons that I learned from him. One is that your current customers can't necessarily tell you how to truly innovate. Because if you ask the Apple II customers in the mid 80s what they wanted from Apple, they would have told you better, faster, cheaper Apple II. They would not have said build a Macintosh. So that I believe is true whether you are Steve Jobs or not. So, using the car business, if you were GM and you asked your customers, what do you want? They would say bigger, faster, cheaper Suburban, or bigger, faster, cheaper Camaro, or, something like that. I don't think anybody would say, I want an electric Camaro. I want an electric
Yeah,
Suburban.
a golf buggy back in the day.
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay, so now going back to our careers, we were saying that you shouldn't necessarily look for this perfect fit, this dream job. But
Yeah.
as you rightly say, there are a lot of variables. There's, a company you're interested in, good money, a cause you care about, a boss, a really good boss who is, values you or whatever. Is there anything particular that you think people should, when they're starting out first, second job, prioritize, or that's really important to try and get right?
I don't know. The problem is I'm 66 years old, so I have a different perspective than you, right? So,
A lot of wisdom.
yeah, well, I hope. I just think that, trying to perfect or optimize your first couple jobs is dubious. I think when you look back, you'll say, okay, so, well, let's take two extremes. So one extreme is because of your careful selection, your interviewing, pursuing your passions, all that bullshit. You pick the perfect job in the perfect company. That company grows up to be Google or Apple, $1 trillion, or Amazon, $1 trillion. And so you pick the perfect job, perfect title, perfect company, and now you're worth 200 million bucks and you're 25 years old. Some people would define that as, doing it right. On
Nailed
the
it.
other hand, let's say at the other extreme, you go to work for Theranos. Okay. So you go to work for Theranos and come to find out, their magic blood sampler, drop a drop of blood can diagnose everything. It was total bullshit. The whole thing, blows up. And so now you pick the worst possible job. Now you are tainted. You went to work for Theranos. The CEO of Theranos is under criminal investigation. The company's gone, total BS, all that, right? So that's the worst case. So now you're thinking, oh God, I got to commit suicide. I mean, my career's over. I work for Theranos.
God, that escalated.
Yeah, but I might make the case that you will learn so much about what not to do working for a failure that over the long run, it may be a more valuable experience than going to work for the next Apple. And going to work for the next Apple, it will be very hard to separate whether you were a factor in the success or you just got on a rocket, strapped your ass in, and it took off. But let me tell you, if you get in a rocket or you ride a tsunami, hard to imagine that you will have the humility to say to yourself, you know what? The explanation for my career success is I was just lucky. Very few people say that. And so you'll start believing your own bullshit, and then you'll be insufferable. So I guess I'm just a half full kind of guy. So if you go to work for the next Apple, hallelujah. If you go to work for the next Theranos, also hallelujah. You'll learn so much. And now let's suppose that God help you, you get a job interview, right? And you're in the interview, and this recruiter says, what did you learn at Theranos? Which is a nice way of saying, why the hell should we hire someone who worked for Theranos, which is totally blew up and, under criminal investigation? And yeah, you have to prepare an answer. You said, listen, I learned so much at Theranos. I learned what not to do. I learned, that you have to question everything. I learned to be skeptical. I learned to be honest. I learned that the truth always comes out. I learned that, you, yeah, you cannot fake it till you make it. You better make it first. So I would think that an interviewer would say, well, this kid has learned a lot of valuable life lessons from a dark situation.
So really, jump in, like you said, well, almost jump in, see what happens, and just make the most of it as best you can,
Well,
essentially.
listen, I mean, here's another real world example for you. So my first job out of my MBA program was working in a jewelry manufacturer. And this jewelry manufacturer sold jewelry to retailers. Okay. Now, from there, I went to Apple because of nepotism, because of my college classmate. So I don't think you could make the case that, Guy, you are so smart, right? So you got your MBA in marketing, then you went to work for a small family-owned jewelry manufacturer, and then you went to Apple. Like like, what's the connection between jewelry manufacturing and Apple in Silicon Valley? There is no connection. It's just dog shit luck. So now, having said that, I will tell you that in the jewelry business, in the job that I was in, it was hand-to-hand combat selling jewelry to retailers. It's a very tough business. It's not like you're just optimizing the homepage. Should this, area of the homepage be blue or yellow? Let's do A/B testing. Okay, this was hand-to-hand combat. And so I look back and I say, you know what? I learned so much about selling in my first 4 years at a jewelry manufacturer that applied to the rest of my career. Thank God I went into the jewelry business before I went into tech business. But, I mean, I don't think most people would say, okay, so you want to be successful in tech? Go to jewelry.
You see, this does prove that you're not some obnoxious monster, because the alternate spin, definitely, it could be, well, I knew tech was all about beautiful design, so I was like, it's got to be beautiful,
It's
so I'll go
total
into
bullshit.
jewelry first.
I like that. I never thought of that. Maybe
Yeah, of course.
I learned about user interface in jewelry. I like that. Maybe
you planned it.
I'll reinvent my past.
16th book, here it comes. I'm not lucky. I'm a genius, Guy Kawasaki.
Yeah, right. Do what I did, not what I didn't do. Right.
So it's kind of like your VC way of thinking, actually. I've heard one of the really interesting things you were saying was you can go up to a VC, a successful one, where they've had this brilliant moonshot startup, and they'll be like, I knew that was, and you rightly say, well, what about the other 23? And it's a bit like that with jobs, isn't it? You could, if you say, oh, I knew, yeah, I can see, very much.
Well, I mean, as you say, so whether you're making an investment in your career or an investment in a company, at the moment you squeeze the trigger, very few people are saying to themselves, I know this company is the loser, but I'm still going to do it. Right? At the moment, it's like falling in love. I mean, at the moment someone proposes to a man or a woman, they're not thinking, I know I'm going to end up in divorce, but I'm going to do this anyway. Right? So at that moment, you always think this is the right decision. And it's only after that you realize it was the wrong decision. So hopefully part of growing up is you learn to recognize wrong decisions in advance.
We're still hoping this podcast isn't one of them. Because when we squeezed the trigger, we were like, this is a great idea. We're still following that train of thought at the moment. So it's okay. So continuing with your personal experience then, another super interesting thing is that you very briefly went into law school, and just very briefly. And the impressive thing is you just knew, or you just quit, right? You were like, this is not for me. I mean, talk about that a little bit, because I think, quitting is actually a really hard thing to do. And sometimes
especially
it's important. Yeah, we want to get into this, family pressure and stuff, definitely.
Well, I went to law school mostly to make my father happy, and I hated it. I mean, I was only there 2 weeks. I hated it. It was just, my ego was not strong enough. Basically, law school is all about telling you, you're crap, and we're going to remake you. And I just could not handle it. My ego was too fragile at that moment. So I quit, and quitting was very hard to do because I never quit anything before. And I thought my family was going to never forgive me. 2,000 years of my family working to get me into this law school. And then I quit after 2 weeks. but to my utter amazement, my father said, "You know what? It's okay, quit. But as long as you make something of your life." I said, "Well, why didn't you tell me that before I went to law school?" But anyway, so I kind of quickly realized I didn't want to be a lawyer. I didn't, and I guess my career has turned out okay post quitting. So I have the benefit of saying, yeah, I was really smart and intuitive, and I understood my heart and my dreams, and I knew it wasn't in law, so I quickly made a decision. That's the positive spin. On the other hand, if I were a loser right now, you'd have to look back and say, oh, you blew it. You quit law school. You were on the right track, and you blew it.
Yeah, it's hard, isn't it?
A lot of it is the ability to declare victory.
It's a bit like your famous phrase, you start with yes, you always say yes. And I guess it's a similar question, how do you know when to say no? Is there something you listen to? Is it just pure gut?
When you go on record saying you should default to yes, let me tell you, it puts a lot of pressure on, because every yokel in the world says, okay, guy, I want you to review my business plan. I want you to speak for me for free. I want you to be my advisor. I want you to be on my podcast. And everybody throws it in my face. Well, guy, you said you default to yes. Yeah. So, but having said that, I will tell you that the downside of, quote, defaulting to yes far exceeds the upside of defaulting to yes far exceeds the downside. So right now I say yes to almost every podcast, and I got to tell you though, sometimes as an initial pushback, I just ask the podcaster, how many people download your episodes, and I have to tell you, sometimes people tell me, well, we're up to 100. I'm like, oh, man, how does this scale? So you better, I don't know if I asked you that, but you sure as hell better have more than 100 downloads of this episode.
Millions. They're coming. Okay. Thanks to you. Purely thanks to you.
Yeah.
We're on it.
Yeah. Okay. So I default to yes, and now you're bigger than Joe Rogan, and you're going to tell everybody to subscribe to my podcast. So then I'll be bigger than Joe Rogan.
Oh, we're definitely going to be. You probably are already bigger than Joe Rogan.
I'm not even close. No, I'm 1/100th of him. So
I was worried that was going to be a bit of a mic drop moment. How do you say no like this? Just leaves the episode. That would have been scary.
Well, some of it is. Listen, I get asked to be on podcasts. I get to review books. I get to review companies, be advisors. All of the above. And I have to say that it's very interesting. So when you get that kind of email, I think a lot of people just absolutely ignore them, right? They don't respond at all.
They do.
And that's yeah. So when you invite someone, like, what percentage of the people you invite respond at all, much less positively?
Well, for purpose of marketing, I'm going to say 200% for any prospective guest that's listening to this. Afterwards, I'll tell you it's much lower.
Okay. Yeah, it's more like 10% probably. So
wow, that's high.
Yeah. So what I've figured out is that even if you respond by saying, no, I'm sorry, I say, I'm sorry, I'm focusing on Canva and my podcast. I just don't have the bandwidth to be your BFF right now. Even saying no, almost every time the person writes back and said, I never expected a response. I appreciate that you're busy. Thank you very much for even responding. So it becomes a positive moment by saying no as opposed to ignoring.
Yeah, and that's the beauty, isn't it? That's like we were saying before. Whatever you have, try and put a positive. There's always a positive spin to find. Not even a spin, because that sounds like a witch doctor. But positive perspective.
Yeah.
So with this, saying no, pushing back. Just to finish the point from before, kids now or young people now who have that parental pressure that you had, what advice would you give them, to deal with that if their parents feel they should be a medic, but they don't want to be? Is there anything you'd say to those people? No
Listen,
pressure.
I'm not a psychiatrist. I am not going to do, I'm not going to say pursue what you love, the money will come, because that's not always true. Um, I think more I should, I should, I should communicate to parents, not the kids. And I
Yeah.
think that, right now in a pandemic and in this kind of conditions, I think people's expectations should be lower. That just, being healthy and being still having a family relationship, all that kind of stuff counts for a lot. And it's not clear to me that helicopter parents or lawnmower parents, of which I can be rightfully accused sometimes, it's not clear to me that that's optimal for your kid's life. And Scott Galloway said it's not. Esther Wojcicki said it's not. Ken Robinson, who unfortunately just passed away, all these true experts in education say, you're doing your kids a disservice. So I also, from observation, I can tell you that uh, the people who went to Ivy League schools in Stanford are not necessarily the happiest people. They may be richer than your average bear, but they're not necessarily happy. So I have changed my attitude like that. Like at an extreme, I will tell you that I think in Silicon Valley, for example, saying that you have an MBA when you try to go work for a tech company is a negative, or at least it's certainly not a positive. It's neutral to negative, because a tech company's perspective is, what, why did you waste 2 years learning about the 2x2 matrix of McKinsey?
What corner
You
are
know
you meant to be in?
yeah, what, like, took you 2 years to figure that out, and it took you 2 years of Harvard case studies. And so now, if you want to go to work for McKinsey or something, you better get an MBA. But I'll tell you, for a startup, I would say for a startup, an MBA is a negative. This We're just going to go down into the deep end of the pool right now. But like, a lot of people tell me or ask me, how do I value an early stage company? How do I set the valuation?
Mm.
And I would tell them, okay, so for every full-time engineer, it's $500,000. So if you have 3 full-time engineers, it's $1.5 million. For every MBA, you subtract 250,000. So if you have 3 engineers and 6 MBAs, your company's worthless. So, and I have an MBA, so it's not like I'm being a hypocrite. I'm telling you. So that I think there's a very interesting thing that happened last week, which is Google is creating these 6-month classes that I think are free about very specific skill sets. Okay, and according to what I read, if you take this class in, I don't know, data analytics or PHP programming, or I don't know, whatever Google's teaching, if you take that class, Google will consider that as qualifications as if you went to college.
Wow.
So wrap your mind around that, right? So you want to be a data analytics person. You just got out of high school. You must finish high school. So you just got out of high school. You take a 6-month course in data analytics from Google, and then Google considers that as much as a 4-year BS degree. I mean, Bachelor of Science, not bullshit. So, wow. I mean, think about that. Wrap your mind around that. I mean, I think education, if you think about education, what other business is there that you pay 200,000, 300,000 up front with no guarantee of any kind of return, right? And you have to apply to do this. What a business, huh? And I think there's going to be so many changes in education, not necessarily for Harvard and Stanford or Oxford, because just putting that on your resume is worth $200,000-300,000 easily over the course of your lifetime. But for the second and third tier school that was charging almost as much, wow, uh, if you're not going to an Ivy League school or Stanford or Oxford or, you know, something like that, or Cambridge, you take the 6-month Google course, you go to work for Google, and wow, I mean, it's a very different path.
It's a serious consideration. I think, you know, this is things
It
people must
is.
start considering, like for real. You know, the tide might be shifting right now.
What? Well, you know, I mean, like, how much is it worth to you to be on a Zoom call with 50 other people from a second or third tier university? Whew, boy, that is, you know, that's a harsh way of stating it, but that is a way of looking at things right now. So I think education is going to have a real, you know, wake up call that, um, guess what? You may have to downsize your staff and administration. Just like any other company, when any other company is in tough times, guess what they do? They lay people off and they cut costs. Only education doesn't do that. Guess what? When you're not getting sales, you reduce your price. You know, have you heard of tuitions going down anywhere? So these kinds of things are going to happen, and you could make the case, well, we'll find an alternate revenue stream, i.e., rich alumni, but I don't know how deep that pond is. But also, I mean, think about it. If you're a billionaire alumni, and you know you're used to giving $10-20 million to a school, and one of the reasons why is because then the next time you go to alumni weekend, yeah, there's the Guy Kawasaki Computing Center. There's the Bill and Melinda Gates Computing Center. There's the Jerry Yang Computing Center. There's the, you know, Sergey Computing Center. Well, in a world where education is basically virtual, what do you give $10 million for? Why would you build a computing center physically, right? So what, you now go, and this is the Guy Kawasaki Zoom window. Not quite the same.
Do you have a library? I have to ask. Are you a library somewhere at some university?
No, I don't have that kind of money.
Oh, not yet.
I
Not
don't
yet.
even have a bench.
Okay. Well, I'll also,
But when you tell your million subscribers to subscribe to my podcast, then I'll be that much closer.
we'll have 2 benches, 1 each, hopefully. That'll be sick. All right, our last few questions. We're just talking of, you know, helping people to get the most out of themselves, as education is meant to do. The other thing that does this is management. And I just think this is super interesting because you've been in the 2 schools of management. You've been in the Steve Jobs, fear drives great results. And now, you know, and now you're working, to put it simply, now you're working with, you know, with Melanie at Canva, which, you know, is very, very successful, but I imagine a different school of motivating people. So
yeah, roughly 180 degrees difference, yes.
Yeah. So what's your take on, you know, fear as a positive thing, getting the best out of people? Where do you stand on that now?
I think my take is that there is no simple and solo answer that Steve Jobs can succeed and Melanie Perkins can succeed. And they could not be further apart in terms of sort of approach to employees, right? But having said that, I mean, they have a lot of common points. Like they both love design. They both are, you know, perfectionists. They're both blah, 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 blah. But on this one parameter about, you know, who's touchy-feely and who's not, they're about this far apart, you know? So I think the wisdom there is that you can succeed in multiple ways. Some people succeed by fear. Some people succeed by love and respect. I mean, it's not just a single way.
Ideally, you
and that's
succeed
important
by
for
both.
people to understand. You you could do both. That's even harder, but yeah, it can be done. So I that's why I caution people, you know, that they should take in a lot of data, understand what Melanie does, understand what Steve Jobs does, understand what Elon Musk does, you know, all this kind of stuff, and then develop their own path and develop their own method. Just don't become a little mini me of anybody.
So downloading that data, if the thing Steve did was this intense environment, this fear, which
Yeah,
drove results, what is that?
yeah.
Would you say that thing that Melanie does really well, in your opinion?
I have never worked for an organization where she truly is an A player who has hired A plus players. And these A plus players, a lot of tech companies, you know, the A player CEO hires A plus player engineers because it's all about engineering in a tech company. But Melanie has hired A plus players in everywhere. And just yesterday we had what we call a season opener where every group explains what they're doing and their goals. And you know, there are people who are acquiring stock photography for Canva, and they just think that they have to do a perfect job. And then there are people who perfect the onboarding process. So once you sign up for Canva, you know, what's your first experience? There are people who are perfecting, you typed Canva into Google, it brought you to the homepage for the first time. How do you interact with Canva in that first 30 seconds? There are people who spend their lifetimes, you know, perfecting that. And then you do that for Android, and you do that for iOS, and then you do that for the search results when you search for a stock photo, and you do that for the scaling of the infrastructure. Believe it or not, Canva has about 35 million monthly active users, and we make 6 to 7 million graphics per day. So that's also an infrastructure question, right? And so Melanie has assembled a team of people who just want to perfect everything they do. And I've never experienced something like that.
And that's not driven by fear or intensity. That is just internal to them.
I I I don't think anybody fears Melanie the way I feared Steve Jobs.
I mean,
Let's
that would
just
be an
say.
achievement. If she did that, that would be like,
Yeah,
whoa.
yeah, yeah. That's just not her modus operandi.
Okay. Okay. And my last question. What is, you know, I asked you before, what's something we should all take from Steve Jobs and something that we shouldn't? What's the same for
Yeah.
you? What's something we should all take from Guy Kawasaki and maybe something
We
we
shouldn't.
shouldn't take from you? A mean
Um,
question.
I think what you should take from me is that um, I truly do believe that the secret to my success is that I am gritty. I am willing to do the dirty job. I'm willing to work my ass off. So, you know, if somebody asks me, you know, Guy, is it because you're smart? Is it because you're visionary? Is it because, you know, whatever? I would say, listen, it's because I am gritty. I will grind it out. There are very few people who can outwork me. And um, so that's the message, that hard work counts. Uh, what you should probably not take from me is, I'm trying to narrow down the list.
Oh, don't be so
Um,
harsh. Don't be so harsh.
yeah, I think that I'm not exactly the most organized person, and I am easily bored, and I uh, you know, I'm not too close, but I'm closer to Steve Jobs in sort of impatience with people, certainly than Melanie Perkins. So you know, like people ask me to be their mentor all the time. I never say yes. I just don't have the patience for it. And just I am like a tough love kind of guy. And it's not clear that tough love is optimal sometimes. How's that?
Well, I tell you what, we will take your optimism and your energy and just
Well,
all of
thank you.
it. Yeah, it's brilliant, mate. Absolutely, really enjoyed it. Thank you so much.
All right. Well, now be sure you tell people to subscribe to Remarkable People, right? Because
Oh, of
I swear
course.
to God, I have the best guest list in podcasting.
Second best. Sorry,
And
second best.
yes, yeah,
Have
second best.
we have you.
I have the
You can't interview
second
yourself.
best. Okay, I have the second best list in podcasting, and you know, from Jane Goodall, Martha Stewart, Andrew Yang, Steve Wozniak, Steven Pinker, Roy Yamaguchi, Christy Yamaguchi. So the nature of my whole podcast is I want to help people become more remarkable by listening to remarkable people explain what they do and how they do it.
And I loved your interview with Melanie. It was awesome. It was really.
Well, thank you.
I was actually trying to take notes myself for my own interviewing. Before you go, we've got a quick game just before you go. It's a quick bit of word association. I'll just say 5 words. Tell me the first thing that comes to your head.
All right.
Cars.
Oh, I thought you were going to tell me 5 words and I'm going to make one association. Cars. Obsession.
Optimism.
DNA.
Surfing.
Full-time job.
Evangelism.
You might find this hard to believe, but when I hear evangelism, I think of Billy Graham. Not Franklin Graham, Billy Graham.
That's a great answer. I love that. Such a curveball.
That's why I am who I am, bro.
Your superpower. That's the last word. What's the association?
My superpower?
Your superpower.
Grit.
Guy, thank you so much.
All righty.